You've traveled far for the Sword of Sanctuary, a powerful weapon that can foresee your opponent's next attack. It's also the second clue to finding the tomb of the first Spinjitzu master. Fenric to the Ninja. Hello, I'm Sensei the Dark Master, and in today's installment of the Lore of Ninjago, we shall be covering one of the most numerous and varied objects in all of Ninjago, swords. We shall be covering the many different swords that have been seen in Ninjago, their history, special attributes, and appearances. But first, we gotta define what a sword is exactly. A sword, as classically defined, refers to a weapon with a long metal blade greater in length than the handle. Most historical ones are single-bladed, though Darth Maul popularized double-bladed ones in fiction. For this video, I shall be including all that fit said definition or are given the name sword, as well as distinctive subtypes such as katanas, kapeshis, and cutlasses, while excluding stuff like spears, axes, pole axes, and spears, which may all get their own videos in the near future. But now, let us start with perhaps the first sword you thought of when it comes to Ninjago. The Golden Sword of Fire was one of the four golden weapons of creation used before time had a name by the first Spinjitzu master to create the land mass that was the realm of Ninjago. He would then pass this sword to his two sons, Wu and Garmadon, for protection. However, Wu had to hide it in the fire temple when his brother Garmadon was consumed by evil and sought to use them for his own devices. Eventually, after banishing his brother to the underworld, Sensei Wu sensed that his brother was returning and sought out four ninja prodigies to help him stop his evil brother. Kai would eventually come to the Fire Temple, lured by Nia, who was actually a fake made by Garmadon using his shadow powers, who tricked Kai into removing the sword from its pedestal. And in the end, Wu had to sacrifice himself into the underworld to protect the Golden Sword of Fire from his evil brother. Eventually, Samukai got this sword and tried to use the four golden weapons to destroy Garmadon, who had overthrown him, only to disintegrate and a portal to open that allowed Garmadon to truly escape the underworld. The golden sword would be used by Kai against the Serpentine, but Garmadon, returning now with four arms, eventually, begrudgingly, was given them as a last-ditch attempt to stop the Great Devourer, and he did use them to destroy this gigantic serpent. However, Garmadon then molded these four objects into his own mega weapon. Thanks to some poorly planned time travel, the Mega Weapon and another Golden Sword of Fire was launched into space and presumed lost. However, it actually landed on the weird comet known as Arcturus, and the resurrected Overlord sent his new Ninjroid army to gather the golden weapons. The ninja followed after them and tried to stop them, but failed, and the Overlord melted down the golden weapons into his golden armor. After the Overlord's defeat, the golden armor was put into storage. But during the March of the Oni, the ninja and Garmadon realized that the Oni were weakened by the golden armor, which led to them getting it and reforging the golden weapons, including the Sword of Fire, and use them to stop the Oni, though at the cost of their intrinsic powers. They would then be held in a compartment hidden in the monastery. However, when the Overlord returned as the Crystal King, he sent his Crystal Council to get the golden weapons, which he corrupted into the weapons of destruction, with the sword of creation turning into the sword of destruction, and it was wielded by a sphere. However, it was purified when Kai unlocked his golden dragon form and grabbed it. In the end, however, this was all a distraction, as the Overlord intended to corrupt the elements of creation, and the sword was destroyed in a final sacrifice so that the golden Ultra Dragon could be formed and destroy the Overlord again. In terms of abilities, the Sword of Fire is able to engulf its blade in flames and allows the user to shoot fireballs at enemies or objects. It can also transform into the vehicle known as the Blade Cycle, which is a red motorcycle that has fire attributes. When corrupted, the sword could turn people into crystal zombies. Then there were the elemental blades, which were a set of powerful swords obtained by the ninja on the Temple of Light in the Dark Island, which restored their elemental powers that they had sacrificed after the golden weapons had been sent off into space. The ninja used their powers to fight the stone army and would later insert the swords into slots which would reveal the golden mech that Lloyd would use in the final battle. Following the Overlord's defeat, the elemental blades disappeared, with some speculating that Sensei Wu put them somewhere safe. Interestingly, a replica would have been seen in The Day of the Departed, which we will get to. The four elemental blades are each possessing a golden hilt and a unique blade that corresponds with the ninja's elements. Kai's is orange at the top and fades into red near the hilt, and could generate and manipulate intense heat and flames, allowing the user to shoot fire blasts, ignite nearly everything, and create defensive barriers of fire. Jay's elemental blade is blue near the hilt and becomes translucent away from the hilt. In the sets, it's translucent blue, while in the show, it's translucent yellow. It allows the user to shoot blasts of lightning, manipulate electricity, and electrocute others. Zane's elemental blade is white at the tip and fades to translucent gray near the hilt. It allows the user to generate frost and ice, such as freezing someone or something in place, and shoot freezing blasts. Cole's elemental blade is green at the tip and fades to purple with a rainbow effect that was better seen in the show than in the sets. With this blade, a user can generate earthquakes and seismic shocks. It can also create piles of sediment. The next sword seen wielded by the ninja was the double-bladed Jade Blade seen during the events of the Tournament of Elements. Aside from its jade coloration, they were utterly powerless and didn't really give anything to the ninja. But oh boy, they did look cool and were part of the tournament in the sense that Chen would eliminate the one person who wouldn't find one. So, yeah, they were colorful, but not really powerful. During this time, we also saw the Antichondrite cult use their own type of sword, referred to as Antichondrite blades, which they pretty much appropriated from the then extinct Antichondrite tribe of Serpentine. They were described as the sharpest blade in existence and bear a unique design with a snake skull hilt and purple crystallized edge. And really, they are quite sharp as we see them cut through other swords and even solid stone itself. In the events of the non-canon game Shadow of Ronin that takes place between the Tournament of Elements and Possession, we saw Ronin use the double-sided sword Obsidian Glaive to erase the ninja's memories. Kai, however, managed to regain his memory thanks to the Obsidian Sword, which allows the user to shoot fireballs, but is otherwise a rather forgettable sword that really looks a lot like the Golden Sword of Fire, except with an obsidian blade, so yeah. During the events of Possession, the Ghost Army utilized a type of sword referred to as Ghost Blades, which had a really ethereal edge that was spooky. Also, more prominently and noteworthy, we saw the Sword of Sanctuary being utilized. This sword was sought after by Moro, for it possessed the ability to reveal the location of the first Spinjitzu Master's tomb alongside the scrolls of Erojitsu, which would allow him to get the Realm Crystal with which he could free the Eldritch Abomination referred to as the Preeminent. It would also be seen during the March of Oni as well, but for some reason, apparently the Oni are immune to its powers. This sword also had the power of precognition, which, thanks to its blade, allows the wielder to see their opponent's next move before that maneuver is made, which is honestly a pretty big edge in combat. It does have one small issue, in that while it can predict the foe's moves, it can't really predict why they're doing it. For example, when Moro dodged an attack by Kai that ended up hitting something that allowed the vehicle he was wielding to slow down and allowed Kai to catch up with him. He didn't really predict what Kai actually wanted to do, merely predicting the action itself. Several other swords were mentioned during this season by Zane when he was looking for the Sword of Sanctuary inside of his memory banks. There was the Sword of Invisibility, which could turn its user invisible, the Sword of Invincibility that could give its user invincibility, the Golden Cutlass, and the Sword of Destiny, whose powers are unknown at this time. During the events of Skybound, we see the Jin Blade, also referred to as the Sword of Souls, take a major part. This weapon had been passed on for centuries along the line of Jin kings until it came to Nadakon, who, after seeing his realm and father, Kanji Khan, be destroyed due to the ninja's destruction of the Cursed Realm, swore an oath to have his revenge upon them and use the sword against them. Jay, in the end, wished that this had never happened, and so the Jin Blade was presumably lost when Ninjago was utterly destroyed. The Jin Blade had several powers. With soul absorption, a user could absorb the souls of its victims by striking them down or forcing/tricking them to wish it all away and trap them inside. Though victims can escape the blade if they have strong willpower, they have a very limited window to do so. Upon absorbing these souls, the user gains access to their elements, and Nauticon had access to magic, dark magic, creation, fire, ice, energy, earth, lightning, speed, poison, metal, smoke, mind, sound, light, shadow, form, nature, and gravity by the end of that season, so it was pretty powerful. If the blade is powered enough by enough souls, it can be used to create regions the user desires, as Nadakon was able to rip environments in Ninjago into the air to recreate Jinjago. During the events of the Day of the Departed, the resurrected villains use a set of weapons referred to as departed blades, or the weapons of the departed. Initially, these were but museum props, but Sensei Yang gave them special powers when he resurrected the greatest of Ninjago's villains. Of these, only three were true swords. The replica Sword of Sanctuary, wielded by Moro, the replica Jade Blade, wielded by the resurrected Master Chen, and a replica Elemental Blade, specifically a fire one, wielded by the resurrected General Kozu. These blades, while not possessing any of the intrinsic powers of the weapons that they were modeled after, do allow a victim to trade place with their killers, effectively truly resurrecting them at the cost of sending their victims to the departed realm forever. During the events of the Hands of Time, we saw the Vermilion Army wield their own swords, referred to as Vermilion swords, which really just look great and have a red blade that was weighted to fall downwards. During the events of the season Hunted, when the ninja were trapped in the first realm, they came into contact with the Dragon Bone Blade, which was constructed out of the bone of a dragon and was initially part of the golden armor set by the first Ninjutsu master, who used it to try and create peace between the Oni and dragons. At some point, it was gained by Iron Baron before the start of the series, who eventually gave it to his second in command, Heavy Metal. Eventually, Wu would gain the sword after the villainous Baron was encased in molten lava after trying to use the ceremonial golden armor to take control of the firstborn. Wu used the dragon bone blade in the fight against his brother, Lord Garmadon, and later against the Overlord and Crystallize. In terms of abilities, this sword could absorb the elements into nothingness thanks to his elemental absorption of the bone. And with elemental attraction and revulsion, the blade could control elemental powers away from their intended targets. It can also break Vengestone chains, but this is potentially non-canon. Then there were the two Blades of Deliverance, the Ivory Blade of Deliverance and the Shadow Blade of Deliverance, which were used prior to the start of the series by Cole's mother Lily to defeat the evil dragon Griefbringer and unite the Months and Geckos together in peace. However, at some point, the Skull Sorcerer stole these two blades and used the theft to cause the two groups to quarrel amongst themselves and prevented them from uniting against his evil army. Cole would later gain possession of these two blades, but they were destroyed as the Skull Sorcerer revealed that they were powerless. But Cole defeated him anyway thanks to the power within himself. Then there were the Illuma swords, which were these fake lightsaber type display weapons that Ninja used against the Grundle. They look cool but are pretty weak and break easily due to being props. There was also the utterly bizarre golden double-bladed sword that had a freaking chainsaw as a hilt. This was used only by Jay and apparently had a will of its own and could cut through almost any material. I wouldn't really classify this as a sword, but I figure it's worth mentioning because I know someone will leave it in the comments if I don't, but it's really more of an axe than a sword. Strangely enough, it resembles a weapon used in Bionicle, specifically by Paraka Hakan. Lloyd had two swords of his own. One is normal while the other is gold. They're fine, but nothing particularly special outside of being his sword. Kai had his own pair of twin katanas that were emblazoned with his name in Ninjago upon them. Now that we have finished covering all the individually named weapons, let us discuss the subtypes of swords that were rather commonplace in Ninjago. Since we ended with katanas, it seemed appropriate to start with them first. The katana is a sword type with a leather-wrapped hilt, a small flat guard, and a long thin blade with a slight curve away from the cutting edge. There have been many color variations throughout the history. Firstly, there is the gold katana used by the ninja, of which there are two variants in molding that were subtly different and changed in order to improve durability. Second, there was the silver variation, which is perhaps the second most common variant next to the golden one. It was used by the ninja and the stone army. They are also seemingly very expensive and are often used for display purposes in addition to combat. The third most common variant is the black variant, which was used by the ninja and ronin during the events of possession. They are also referred to as deepstone katanas and were able to attack ghosts due to being made out of deepstone, which is a type of stone that is mined from beneath the sea. They were also used by the stone army in the sets and the Oni during the March of the Oni. Less common, we would then see the spring green variants, first used by the Ghost Warriors, and then later the ninja during the events of Prime Empire. We would then see a red variant of the katana during the events of the Sons of Garmadon, especially by Mystery. The red visors from Prime Empire would also use this variation. They were also wielded by the Stone Army and Ninjoroids during the legacy wave of the reinterpretations of various old sets in a new style. The Azure Katana variant were then seen during the events of the Secret of Forbidden Spinjitzu and were utilized by Blizzard Samurai. They would later be used by Hosner in Prime Empire. Their translucent pink crystal katana variant would be seen during the events of Crystallize, and due to being made up of Venge Stone, they could negate elemental powers to a certain extent. The orange variant would be seen used by Richie in Prime Empire, and Cole in the Ninjago Core Wave. The last three variants of the katana are truly rare and obscure. The brown katana variant was exclusively seen alongside the Spinjitzu Training Neo from the collectible minifigures wave in the Lego Ninjago movie series. The white variant was seen in only one set, wielded by the Stone Guardians in set number 71747, The Keeper's Village, which I've reviewed, so check that out. There was also the show exclusive Ice Katana variant, seen in translucent blue. And man, I really wish all three of these would become more common because they're really cool. Then there was the Dark Blade, which was a very large, wide blade utilized by the Skulkin Serpentine and Endochondroi cult. It came in four colors, the base one being a gunmetal, which was capable of doing great damage. Then there was the silver variation, which was said to be even more powerful and thus in more limited supply. Then there was the golden dark blade, which was even greater in power, but was terrible in the hands of a non-master. It is also referred to as a warlord's cutlass, but it's not a true cutlass, as we'll see those in a bit. The tan dark blade, also referred to as a stone blade, which, while not particularly more powerful than the other variants, is exclusive to the Endochondroi cult. Then there are the butterfly swords, which are these highly ornate swords seen in silver and black variants, wielded exclusively by the Stone Army. Then there were these pirate cutlasses, seen in silver, black, and white, which were used by the Sky Pirates. Then there were the scimitars in copper, used by the Pyro Vipers. Some say they are kopeshes, but they're referred to as scimitars in the official media, so I'm going with that. Now, in terms of weaknesses, swords are weak in that they are not particularly efficient against long-range weapons and can be expensive to make, but are overall decent weapons. Overall, though, what can we learn from the swords of Ninjago? Where we learn that it is important for us to be armed properly for the tasks we face in our real lives. I am Sensei the Dark Master, and if you arm up, you'll always be ready for anything. And join me next time on the Lore of Ninjago. Have a nice day and subscribe if you like these sorts of videos.